Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thanks for joining us today. It is 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. And we are glad that you joined us. It's September 30th, 2017. I cannot believe the year is slipping by so fast. I want to give a shout out to anybody who may be listening in Texas. Our hearts are with you all over the country. We know you guys are enduring really severe hardship right now. And please know that there's a lot of people out there organizing and helping. On social media, there's a lot of notifications of where you can find help. So if you can, although I don't know how you go to social media a lot of times when you're standing in a flooded area, but our hearts are with you. Today we have with us a citizen scientist who has been with our show a few times to talk about the spike in radiation levels, Matt Hulstrunk. So, Matt, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, good morning, Lonnie. Good to be here.
Well, for those of you who might have remembered, Matt went on a little trip, a hiatus up to the Columbia River, and I about had a heart attack when he said that on air, but he's back and safe, or so he feels safe, and he had a great time. So I want to thank you. Were you there during the boat show, by the way?
No, I think I missed that.
Okay, good, because I wondered what that was like. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you today about what's on everybody's mind is Houston. If you had noticed any spikes in radiation or any, have anything like that about and how easy it is for the EPA to be giving information out about that.
Yeah. So, this hurricane, Harvey, which of course was a Cat 4 when it slammed into the coast, it basically just to it was more to the west of southwest of Houston, but it hit the coast and then bounced off into the Gulf and then sort of just teetered there for a while, coming up the coast, bringing in a ton of water. I guess they've got over 50 inches of rain there right now. And now it's moved inland slightly and sort of stalled out. It's currently a thunderstorm there, but it's bringing in a lot of Gulf moisture, and it's dumping it basically in the Mississippi River watershed area. And so what we have down there, reactor-wise, in that area, we have basically 4 reactors down there that are of concern. One of them, which is the most northerly on the Mississippi, it's Grand Gulf 1, that is at 0% right now. So they've put that one in the cold shutdown for.
What does that mean?
0%?
They're at 0%.
Well, they're 0% power level. They're not generating power from it. Okay. And that one's southwest of Vicksburg, Mississippi, right on the Mississippi River. As we go south from there, we run into the next one down is River Bend, which is northwest of Baton Rouge. That's also on the Mississippi, and they're at 95%. So they may be bringing that thing down offline too. I don't know. That's an indicator when you start seeing these percentages drop off. And then the third one, which is the most southerly one, it's Waterford 3. They're still at 100%, and they're west of New Orleans, and they're on the Mississippi River too. I don't know why they're still at 100%. Those guys should be powering down too, and trying to with this hurricane just dumping all this rain in that area, they're gonna go to the flood stage. They've already have a big storm surge alert going on for the Texas-Louisiana border, and not the border, but the coast. So they're expecting a high level there, but they're going to get a lot of water dumped into the Mississippi, and those levels are going to raise up high. So yeah, right now, if I look at the radiation data that's coming off the RadNet, specifically, I looked at Houston first to see what was going on there. They had a big spike a couple days ago, before they went offline, and they've been offline now for 2 days. But they had a noticeable spike of 1,000 CPM in their gamma 2. So it went from about 1,400 to 24 really quick, and then basically.
So what does that mean? 1,400 to 24. What's standard?
Well, standard is, in that area we're probably talking about 100 CPM, not 1,000. So it's a 10 times increase in one day, which tells you probably something came through. That's pretty significant.
Matt, when I just pulled up, but when I just pulled up the map, I just put on Google Maps nuclear power plants in Texas, and you're talking 4 plants just in the vicinity, because there's quite a lot of nuclear activity there. I mean, there's according to this map, near Houston, just north of it is Sandow Steam, which you mentioned, Nuclear Science Center, Entergy Power Plant, and to the east of Houston, directly east of Houston, is that power plant that you were talking about, Sabine. That's right on the border of Louisiana. And
Sabine?
Sabine, isn't that the one that you were talking about, Sabine?
No, I talked about Grand Gulf 1, River Bend 1, and Waterford 3. Those were the three that were close. The other one that was southwest of Dallas is Comanche Peak, and they're still at 100%.
Yeah,
so this came right off the NRC's the Nuclear Regulatory the NRC's homepage.
Would you repeat the names of those just one more time? River Bend, Comanche Peak.
So going from north to south, you have Grand Gulf 1, which is up the Mississippi, near Vicksburg, southwest of Vicksburg. And then as you come down, you hit River Bend, which is at Baton Rouge, and then you hit Waterford 3 at New Orleans. And those are the only 3 power reactors that I know of. I don't think there's any others in that stretch. At least it's not showing up on NRC's homepage.
Maybe they don't operate it. Well, you know what? It's true, because this is the thing. Those all the other activity, like the STP nuclear power plant that is in the news, that one, Bend Energy, that one is there because it's close to there. but they really only have one or two that people are talking about. But it looks like there's quite a few nuclear facilities in the area, just on this map as Google has marked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, nuclear facilities, yeah, places that, that mine it or refine it or process it. Yeah, all of those activities, yeah, they're all over the place. My God. So
now,
any one of those could be in trouble too, and those really aren't.
Wow.
They're not monitored really well at all.
When you say river
At
bend,
all.
this is Colorado Bend Energy. Is that the one you mean? That's the exact title that's on the homepage. It says it's just.
I don't know, but it's northwest of Baton Rouge on the Mississippi. Riverbend 1 is what they call it, and it's at 95%. That one's at 95% power right now.
Oh, but you're not even talking about directly near Houston.
No, there's really not too many near Houston.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. Houston does not really have a power reactor near it. The nearest one I could find was southwest of Dallas, Comanche Peak. And that was still at 100%.
Okay, I'm looking at a map right now, and there is Houston. I mean, there's Entergy power plant, and that is just north of Houston. I mean, does not look very far away from Houston.
Is that nuclear? Is it a nuclear plant?
Let me look. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe it's not a nuclear plant. Maybe that's why it's not. But still, all these places are inundated. So all of these places are just completely full of water right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. They probably are in a blackout situation in Houston right now, I would guess, for the most part of the city, if not all of it. Yeah, they got some bad days ahead of them down there.
Well,
this storm, it doesn't look like it's going to be moving quickly out of the way anytime soon. There's nothing from the west coming in to push it out, as far as I can tell. I mean, we're under this big old high right now here on the whole west coast, and it's just circulating this smoke around and around, and that sort of is butting up against the hurricane's cell, and it's stripping some of the smoke off into the hurricane too. So they're getting a little bit of our smoke down there too.
Well, this is my question was, is the EPA even monitoring the air down there? Then it sounds like they're monitoring Baton Rouge.
Yeah, they are. They've got let's see now. So I've got sites down at Shreveport, Louisiana, and Baton Rouge itself. And so both of those have shown upticks in the last couple of days.
Why? That's really odd. I have to say I'm stunned that we don't have one near Houston.
Well, there is a RadNet station there, but there's no nuclear reactor there, to my knowledge. I mean, I checked. I've got a site that I get on that has all of those.
Well, there is a nuclear reactor. The STP nuclear reactor is there, and it's just south. It's in Bay City, Texas. And that's one that people are very concerned about because it's right, they're all along the coast or near water, right? And so this one, it can only sustain a certain level of flooding. The pressure of the building can't take that much water. You know what I'm saying? I know that, and I'm very anxious. I know Libby Halevi is going to be, has been interviewing people from that area in Nuclear Hot Seat. She's going to be discussing that this weekend. So I'm very curious to see what they're talking about. Because I mean, between the chemical releases that's happening in Houston and the nuclear contamination, I mean, the aftermath of building their homes and all that other stuff is going to be secondary. People are going to be sick.
Yeah, they're going to have a big old mold issue too going on in the aftermath after everything starts drying out.
Well, so what was the spikes levels in New Orleans? What is the levels? Do you see any difference like since it started, and Or has anything changed since the hurricane is? It really hasn't even left Louisiana yet.
No, it hasn't. No, it's on the border right now of Texas and Louisiana, sort of just sitting there spinning. And typically, when you have, when I see something like that, when there's a lot of rain, that's going to wash a lot of the air particulates out. So typically in a rainstorm, you would see the levels lower and not as high. High levels typically happen under a high pressure system, and sunny, hot air is where you see a lot of the high radiation. This one, however, I'm seeing higher levels in the middle of a big rainstorm, so that's a little concerning.
That is a little concerning, that having a spike during a rainstorm.
Big daily spikes with hours missing. I mean, pretty much all the stations, even up and down the West Coast right now, we had an incident like 2 days ago on the 28th, it looks like, and there was a period in there where almost all the RadNet stations up and down the coast were down for 6-8 hours that day. So something was going on. It could be we were under a high pressure with the smoke, and that combined. Maybe there's some other event that happened too. I don't know. I haven't heard.
Yeah, I get you on that. Well, that's the thing. This is the thing we don't know, and especially since it's the Mississippi, right? It could be coming from, frankly, St. Louis. To be honest.
Yeah. The winds are being pulled down from the northeast of there, so it could be. There's a lot of stuff up in that area.
Well, I mean, we know that St. Louis is actually burning. I mean, there is a fire still. I mean, the smoke. People are still living in an ultra dangerous situation at the Westlake landfill, and all over St. Louis, because as has been disclosed by many people, I think Wendy Lumetta was saying that Janelle found this out originally, and they started doing it. There's old newspaper articles about this, where they buried that nuclear waste. They put it in the dump site, and they used to let people come get free landfill. Mm. So there are people that have said that that's probably standard. Like a lot of people go to landfills and just get free dirt. A lot of communities. And so, no wonder they don't test for radioactivity up there. You know what I mean? Like it is everywhere. So you saw a spike in it during the storm or after the storm?
It's been ongoing. The spikes in that area, these high up and downs, high up and down spiking. Yeah. Lowers out probably, typically, you would see the highest levels in the morning, and then it lowers out to a point, and then rises again. Usually at night. Usually the nighttime has, believe it or not, has more radiation in the air than the days, just because of the atmosphere dropping down with the cooling. Everything sort of comes down on you, and then when the sun hits, it goes back up.
Wow.
But they're under a lot of They're under a lot of clouds down there, so they're not having that really happen. There's something else going on down there.
Huh. And it's coming in. Well, that's very interesting. Did it start? Was there a pattern of this before the storm, or did it start with the storm?
This pattern happened. Let's see here. So I'll go to Baton Rouge here. It looks like, so today's the 30th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this pattern happened 2 or 3 days ago. It's ongoing. It's still happening.
So somebody's.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Something's going on then.
Yeah. Well, hurricanes are big. That Class 4 is a big deal, and it's pulling a lot of stuff up, and it's got to be fed from something else. So there's high pressure zones that are feeding it from the bottom, And those high pressure zones will bring down a lot of stuff too from the upper atmosphere.
Yeah, and that's probably a lot of what we're seeing is maybe there's just these plumes of radiation floating around the Earth that are just bringing it down.
Yeah, could very well be.
Wow. Well, I want to ask you a little bit. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit and ask you
Sure.
about the radiation levels here on the West Coast that you're seeing, because we are living, we're talking about floods in Texas. We are having fires on the West Coast, and it's for real, folks. Like, our skies are smoky. It smells like a chimney outside. Like, smells like someone's burning the chimney all the time now. I don't know where you're at, Matt, but that's what it smells like here. And the air, you kind of have to keep, I don't have air conditioning, and I have to keep the windows closed now because it is so smoky. And that smoke doesn't feel good. There's something in that smoke that is not right. Doesn't feel, it just feels chemically. I'll just tell you what. Well, they are probably dumping flame retardant on it desperately to try to make it stop.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them around, and they're. I just came back from a motorcycle trip down in Northern California around Mount Shasta, and the smoke down there basically drove me north. And
wow,
the whole Medford Valley was thick, and I had to get up to I got up to the top of Mount Ashland and took a look around. It was clear up there, but you could, everywhere you looked, it was just a blanket of smoke everywhere. And I could see Shasta in a different distance, but just barely, and just the top of it.
What's that doing to the radiation levels out here then? Are we seeing smoke, or is it changed?
Yeah, I didn't have my detector with me when I was coming back. I was sort of kicking myself. But when I got back here, it was actually a clear day, and I checked it, and everything looked fairly normal. And then the day after, we got hit by probably the worst smoke that we've had here in Corvallis during this season, and it was really thick. And my detector, I've got a 2-inch pancake Mazur, and typically my high spike readings. And I'm just measuring 5-second durations here. Typically, they would be less than 60. Very rarely would I see anything over that. And it didn't take very long when that smoke hit, and it was a substantial temperature increase too at the same time. So it was temperature and smoke, and my detector was quickly climbing 70s, 80s, 90s, up into the 100 range, which I hadn't seen before. I mean, I've seen a couple of high spikes, but I haven't seen sustained anything like that for any duration.
Where exactly were you?
I was in my apartment, reading it from the table in my apartment, and then I went outside, and it was the same thing out there. It was coming in.
Wow.
And so, that's a 50%, at least a 50% increase, just from the smoke coming in.
Wow.
So that's something to be aware of, And it's, of course, it's pretty hard to get away from it when it happens, because it's like, where do you go?
Right.
One of the things to do is to get up in elevation. So get up high on a mountain if you have one nearby. I'm lucky here. I got the Mary's Peak, which is the highest Coast Range mountain nearby. So I escape up there every once in a while when it gets really smoky here. But
well, Corvallis, I think, is getting more smoke. I think Corvallis gets more. I think Corvallis is getting more smoke than Eugene. In terms of smoke.
I've been watching it close. I've been watching the valley, and really where the valley gets the most smoke, has been getting the most smoke, is the west side of the valley. So over by Lebanon, Sweet Home, over in that area. Yeah. But the fires are closer over there too, and the smoke seems to stay over on that side more. And then during the day, it'll come and drift over here, and then head out to the coast usually with an offshore breeze.
Well, maybe that's why there's a spike in radiation. If you think it's getting to Albany?
That definitely gets to Albany. Yeah.
Because
And
Albany
Fort
is,
Allen.
radioactive. It's a fuse wrap site.
Yes, there are. Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, it's a big circle. If you go to the fuse wrap site, there's a big circle at this address, and they have like a 5 mile radius. Like that's the fuse
Yeah.
wrap site. I mean, this is the thing about all of this is our reality, and that's why I think it's important for us to find out so we can protect ourselves. There's things we can do. We don't have to
Yeah.
just. I mean, it's not going to protect us completely. It's not, a get out of jail card free, but it will help us. I mean, this is our new reality, whether you want to accept it or not. And I guess it's because I object to the healthcare for profit system where we're all just like their little lab rats, and they're like, don't worry about getting cancer and radiation. We can plug you up with all kinds of things and poke you and pay. You have to pay us all your money so that you can live, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I object to that, and that's why I think it's important for us to learn how to live in this time. There's things that we can do. Like, frankly, I was thinking about your journey to the Columbia River while you were on vacation. The fact that you're having so much fun there and doing it on a once a year thing. I mean, I don't know if it even increases your exposure anymore. But it does. It actually, it has to. That's such a directly contaminated area. It's unbelievable. And so when you go in that water, you don't feel any difference at all. There's nothing. You don't even notice it. It doesn't look orange or anything like that.
Well, I've been sailing. I've been windsurfing that river for a long time. I first came out here in '91. And I spent 15 years in the Hood River area, basically windsurfing as much as I could. So I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on the river, in the river. Back in the '90s, basically the '90s is when I did it. Probably a good 10-year stretch there. And I had a lot of friends, that windsurfed, and, I've had a lot of my closest friends actually die from cancers being there, and, they were, not that old, under 50, and a lot of them were younger than that, getting all sorts of strange cancers, all sorts of stuff. And, it's a little concerning. It really is. But
so you just have been one of the few who hasn't gotten it yet. But you have had friends.
I've had some skin issues, which a lot of people have, and I don't know whether I can target that to the river or just sun exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wear wetsuits, and I've got weird skin conditions on my lower legs from the water. That.
I bet you do. It's the water that's toxic. Oh my God, you're hilarious.
Well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do,
I guess, and I guess that's the thing is, it's what I really can't get over is why people are not banding together in communities and saying this has got to stop.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a few groups in Hood River. Basically every windsurfer that I know is against anything nuclear. There's not a single person out there that's not, and I'll include the kiteboarders too with that, or anybody else that's in the river. They all get it and understand it. It's just a matter of organizing and getting, trying to get those things shut down and cleaned up, and I mean, there isn't even technology to clean them up. I mean, they got problems there at Hanford with stuff leaching into the river that's been going on for decades and decades and decades, and there's no easy way to stop it. It's just that we got to stop producing it. There comes to a point where you just got to stop producing all this crap.
Right. Right. Like the Columbia Generating Station needs to be shut down now. Period.
Yeah, it's at zero power right now. nothing to do with the hurricane, of course.
No.
They've been having mechanical issues at that ancient piece of. So.
Well, it's costing the ratepayers so much money. That's the issue, and
yeah,
it's completely ridiculous that they don't shut it down. They should
shut them all down.
It's kind of like that nuclear plant in Texas. It should just be shut down. That one in Houston, in the STP nuclear. That is in fact, you were right about all those sites that it pulled up all of the like hydropower plants and everything. But the STP nuclear operating power plant company is there, and it really actually needs to be shut down because there is some severe danger, and it's just it could be a very serious case. Same thing like that with that hurricane heading toward Louisiana. That could not be fun either. You know what I mean? These are precarious things that say even these hydropower plants. That's the thing. I saw a live Facebook feed the other day, Matt, with a guy there was people in the background, like they were getting sick and vomiting. And he was like, look, y'all, like all of our neighbors do we sit in our houses that are flooding, or do we come outside and expose ourselves to this hideous air? They were trying to have it go through. It was like a really sad. I mean, a lot of these. So does that affect the levels of contamination readings if the air gets mixed up with chemicals? Does that affect it?
Well, it probably won't affect the radiation levels unless it's some sort of an isotope chemical, right? I mean, that only just reads, disintegrations that are happening. It's not. They're not reading.
I get you.
They're not reading volatile organic compounds or anything like that, which are really bad too. I mean, that can send people into asthmatic shock and all sorts of nasty stuff. I myself I'm really sensitive to those kind of chemical smells too. So I'm quite aware of that stuff going around also. But it's the stuff that we can't see or smell or taste or hear,
or even acknowledge. We're not even allowed to acknowledge it. Speaking of acknowledging, I wanted to give a shout out to KEPW.org. Eugene Peaceworks has an FM radio station here in Eugene, and I think you even get it. It's 97.5 FM here in our area. And they've turned into an affiliate, and they're putting our shows on the air on Thursdays at 6. They're going to fit other shows into the slots if they have it.
Right on.
Yeah, so I just thought I'd give a shout out because really, it's good that they're speaking of anti-nuclear. That's how this was kind of Eugene Peaceworks is kind of Rick Gold's baby. I seem to think, him. They've been doing it for a super long time, and not enough people are really willing to talk out about shutting down the nuclear power plants. This is not something that we can just accept anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear behind all that whole industry. It's such a large, giant industry, and it has so much power behind it with military and government and corporate all just fused into one giant beast. It's really the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about way back. I mean, he was really talking about that nuclear aspect of it, and it's a large beast. I mean, it touches everybody, almost everybody. If you're manufacturing anything in the country, you're going to be manufacturing a part for one of those nuclear reactors. Just about anybody. Whether you're in electronics or piping or, the list goes on and on and on. So there's a lot of people that are employed, that are basing their employment on the fact that these things still survive. We have to change our whole thought behind it and move into another direction where there's also opportunity for employment. new stuff that'll come up that we can build a manufacturing base here in the U.S.
That's how they came up with new scale, new stuff. I can hear Jose Reyes saying the same. Oh, new stuff, new scale, new stuff. I mean, these are these SMRs. They're pushing these small nuclear reactors, saying that they're a new idea. And this is the idea: is we need no more nuclear reactors. Period. Because we have no idea what to do with the current amount of byproduct that it gives us, which is contamination. Whether you bury it in the ground or not, it's still there. It's really ridiculous to say we're not going to have nuclear waste. We are having nuclear waste. They're just burying it in the ground and not moving it. Really, which threatens the community. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. It's a completely ridiculousness thing. So the radiation rates in Corvallis were 100. I want to get back to this because this subject fascinates me, how it spikes up and spikes down. About the time it was at 100, now, how does that relate to what you see on the EPA? Because you earlier said that you saw readings of like 1,000 or 1,400, and now you're talking 100. What are you talking about here?
Well, it's mostly the only thing that really is the same is they're radiation. It's radiation that I'm talking about, ionizing radiation. So it'll be alpha, beta, or gamma. Okay. So that is the basis of what I look at. The EPA has all these different ranges of gamma. They no longer give out beta, so they're only giving you gamma. My detector will detect alpha, beta, and gamma. Alpha, it probably is not detecting much of that, but it is detecting beta, and I think for the most part gamma. So we can it's sort of a close comparison. And the levels, I mean, you can't really say, well, I'm at 100 here. I look at the EPA graph. Pick one of the ranges. Okay, you got 8, 9 ranges here. This one is in the 1,000 range. This one is in the hundreds range. This one is in the tens range. And so which one? And if you add them all up, you're in the 10,000 range or something.
Yeah, so if you average the means.
You can't
but the
really
question
compare.
Is, what's the difference in the ranges? Like, do the different ranges have different effects on our bodies, or what are they talking about there?
Well, it has to do with how they go about measuring the radiation. Really, that's the key here. So I don't want to look at just a single number. What I want to do is look at a graph over time. And when you look at a graph over time, doesn't matter whether it's my graph or their graph, you'll see these ups and downs. And so what I do then, I adjust my scale on my graph to mimic what they have, what they're giving me, and then I overlay it to see where there's any differences. And the last time I did that, they were pretty darn close. They actually, it was more surprising to me that they were closer than I thought they were going to be. I haven't done that now in a couple of months. I need to relook at that again and see what's going on, because this time of year, when we start moving from summer into fall, typically we start getting some larger spikes, and we start getting big holes in the EPA's data where they won't give us any data. So this is the time where I'm really starting to get interested in seeing what's going on. What are my levels going to be compared to their holes? Which is going to give me an indicator as to what they consider, I would say, dangerous, right? I mean, if they're not showing data, why is that?
Yeah, but let me ask you this. I'm still a little bit confused about the numbers, because you said you were sitting at your table. You normally get 60, 70. This one went up to 100. But when we're looking at the gamma rays, now is that gamma radiation that you measured?
It's probably both beta and gamma.
Okay, and so when you look at the EPA and I've looked at those charts. You can look at Corvallis or any big city near you, and it opens up like this chart with all these different colored lines that range anywhere up, like you said, from tens to hundreds to tens of thousands, to be honest. And you're like, what does that mean? And how does that translate? Like, what's the equivalency on your machine that you're testing with your gamma radiation in your own house? Like, what's that 100, is that equivalent? I mean, is that 100 equivalent to 100 on the chart, or does it mean 1,000? I mean, is it having a different type of measurement? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's really complicated. It's taken me a long time to sort of grasp a way to meaningfully compare my data with the EPA data. You know, it's almost like they try to confuse us with a lot of information when really we really don't want that. I just look at one type of gamma, and I chose gamma 2 a long time ago. So that's the one I look at. I don't look at anything else. I don't care about anything else. That's the only one I look at.
Why did you pick that one?
And it doesn't matter. You can pick any one you want and say that's the one I want. But just continue to look at that one and don't look at the others. So you get familiar with what it should look like. And then you can see ups and downs. You don't want to get confused. They want to confuse you here, and you don't want to be confused. So I just look at gamma 2. And that's all I've been looking at for the past year. And even with just gamma 2, when you go from site to site, there's big differences in ranges. I mean, it can range in the 1,000 to 2,000 range here. If you go up to elevation up to Colorado, it may be 4,000 to 5,000 or 4,000 to 6,000.
Yeah.
So
we've seen that.
So the elevation, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're looking at these things. Elevation has a lot to do with it. The higher up you go, the more radiation you're going to get, and the more you're going to see on these graphs. And I've seen that, and I've actually gone to each one and said, range, here's the elevation, and I can see exactly what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can take my detector up, to the top of a mountain, and sure enough, it's reading higher here than it was down in the valley. So that's one important thing to understand. So it's hard to compare between cities. But if you have a city, if you live in a city and you want to, watch that, just concentrate there. I've concentrated on Corvallis. There should be, 300 more people around the country, at least one in each city, concentrating on their city, on what's going on with their radiation. I mean, that would be ideal, and have those people get to feel comfortable with looking at it and going, oh, that's high, or oh, that's low, or I mean, it's very easy to do when you start graphing it out, especially over the years. And the EPA has opened up a lot of old data now. They got data now going back to '06, so you can graph every year from '06 to current and see what's going on.
What did it look like during Fukushima? Was it super spiked?
Well, it's either super spiked or super holy, depending on what you're looking. If you're looking at just EPA data, big holes, months-long holes.
Wow.
Some of the areas had year holes. I mean, there was some really interesting stuff,
where were there like big gaps on the West Coast, or where?
Colorado Springs was one of the big ones. Colorado Springs. It's high in elevation. And they had a massive blackout.
Wow.
That ended in 11. I don't think it started up till sometime in 12. They had probably the biggest one. Corvallis had a solid month of no data.
Wow.
I think it was in August. Typically August you wouldn't have high readings. Typically in the summer months there are lower readings than the winter, but they wouldn't show the data for a solid month, 30 days solid.
Wow.
30 days,
How kind of them to not let us know.
And then they brought it back online in Corvallis, and then toward the fall there were a series of a dozen week-long blackouts that happened one after the other. Boom, 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 boom. 12 of them. 12 week-long blackouts of data. So there was something else was coming in at that point too, whether it was residual burning of pools or whatever over there. There was something going on.
That was in 12?
That was in 11, the end of 11.
At the end of 11.
Yep. End of 11.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense because that makes sense because it happened in March, and then it takes a few months to get here, and they're like, we're not telling anybody about that. You guys are on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah, they they really had a problem even discussing the pools. You know, they didn't want to go there because that's where all the radioactive load is. You know, it's more there than in the reactor by a factor of, oh God, a lot. You know, 10 at least, if not more. And so those are the real dangers, not the reactors. It's the spent fuel pools where they keep just 30 years of used, very highly radioactive waste, and that waste still has some of the recent offloads has a really high latent heat still going on in it. They need to be kept cool. They need to be kept underwater and with cooling of the water and with circulation of the water, and you can't stop that circulation or that cooling for very long. And you know, you look at some of the pictures now that are coming out at especially Unit 3 and all the debris that landed on top of all those on all those pools and sunk down and just blanketed the top of the spent fuel in the pools. I mean, it just choked up any water circulation that was in there. Choked it right up. So, yeah.
Well, the hard part is like now with the nuclear waste in the United States, in Texas, just as you were talking about that, I'm like, the nuclear waste in Texas is being stored there.
Yeah.
I mean,
at each reactor, yeah. Each reactor has.
I wonder how much pressure these half-inch thick casks can actually withstand. I mean, I wonder how much that they can withstand, how much pressure these thin casks can withstand in Texas.
You're talking pressure of what? Pressure of the
pressure of
building?
Pressure of the water. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So they're like big swimming pools, right? I mean, that's exactly what they look like. They don't have covers on them. I mean, the only cover is that shell, and usually it's a pre-engineered metal building, a thin shell around them, and that's the secondary containment. You know, when that goes away, you know, those pools are just open to the air. You know, I mean, when you walk in one of those buildings, the pool is right there. You could actually dive right into it and go swimming. You know, not that you'd want to, but it's you know, it is right there, and you know, they just use that water as the blocker for the radiation. Water's a good blocker of radiation, and so they have those rods down in the pool, you know, maybe 12, 15 feet down. They're really deep pools, and these rods are quite long, but they're down deep, and so they're not really radiating out too bad. You know, not to an extent where they consider it dangerous, although I wouldn't really want to go in one of those places. So,
well, in Texas, at Comanche Peak, they have 9 casks that are bolted shut. They were first loaded in 2012, and they're the half-inch. Those are those quarter-inch tanks. You know what I mean?
Those are dry casks. The dry casks that they put them in. Sometimes they take the fuel out of the pools and they put them in dry casks. If the fuel has been sitting and cooling off for a long enough period, and typically it takes about 10 years for these things to get cool enough to lose enough latent heat through their radioactive decay to put them inside a cask. So I think you're talking about a cask where they put them in there and they
dry cask inventory. That's
dry cask, yeah. And so that's a better way than a pool, because you don't have to worry about the pool losing water and the fuel burning.
Oh, okay.
So they're in the cask. I mean, there are other issues with casks too. I mean, longevity of how long do they really last? That hasn't been tested yet. We really don't know.
They
We're
do
putting
know.
them in there, and
they do know. That's one of the things that you should go to Donna Gilmore's page. The company knows it starts to leak after 20 years. They do know that.
Yeah.
It's on their website. She's actually really changing minds on that one because even our elected officials didn't know. Like they really were not aware, and it's right on the website. Like when she got into it, she started reading their technical stuff, and she was like,
Yeah.
"Wait a minute." So she's been on here quite a bit with talking about that. This is how I didn't know, and I actually refer to her site all the time. That's where I got that. You can go to handouts on the dry cask inventory. She has an inventory of all the dry casks in case anybody's out there and wants to look around.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised to hear that only because I know that when nuclear fuel goes through half-life process, there are gases that are formed, and those gases, if you're keeping them inside a pressurized, totally sealed thing, that pressure is going to increase and increase and increase, and you have to have some way of venting it, or it'll explode like a bomb eventually. It'd be sort of like boiling water, in a on a pot that doesn't have any steam outlet, and you'd have an explosion after a while. And so I understand that, I get that, and that's why the reactors are venting all the time too, because they just have a lot of gases that are produced in there.
Well, it's like these spikes. It's like these spikes that we're seeing in Louisiana right now. That could be because they're letting them vent or something because they're preparing to shut down or something like that.
Could very well be.
The issue is we really don't know what they're planning. We're on a need-to-know basis, and we don't need to know. And that to me is another part of the abuse of the nuclear industry. We ought to be all responsible partners, and they ought to be able to tell us what the facts are instead of just pretending. Like you going to the Columbia River to go windsurfing, knowing what you're doing, is a much more rational choice than them denying that, having a boat show every year and denying that there's nothing wrong with the water. Right, you at least are making a rational choice for yourself. Your friends who have died early, who have paid the ultimate consequence, made a choice that they decided on. You know what I mean? All of them do.
Well, most of them had eyes wide open when they did it.
Yeah. But you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I can actually respect that. But for them to have this power and control and treat us like we're 6-year-olds, like you just don't need to know. And in fact, I disagree with that also. Like if something's really serious going along with kids, you need to give them something. You need to brace them and explain it to them in their terms that they can understand. But it's completely unreasonable to keep any human being in the dark about gravely critical matters.
Yep. I agree. It produces unwanted distress.
So, Matt, I want to get back a minute to this these radiation level readings. Do you only compare Corvallis, or do you look across the country?
I've expanded my my looking. I'll leave it at that. So. Yeah,
have you noticed anything abnormal since you've done that? I mean, is there anything? Is there kind of a common theme, or have we seen anything abnormal?
Well, there's, the abnormal thing was they took the beta away. The beta kept climbing out of sight. They couldn't control it. Wow. So they were taking the graphs and messing with them and changing the dial to dial the things down and make it look silly, and they were taking the bottom of the graph and throwing it into the negative zone, and it looked even more ridiculous. And at that point they said, we can't control, we can't manage the beta levels, so we're going to just not show them. So beta is certainly out there is climbing to some degree, and I have a problem with what they're doing there, because I don't see that really on my monitor, although I've only been monitoring now for about 8 months. I don't have a lot of data. I don't have a full year's worth of data yet, so we're still out on what I think. But I'm trying. I'm trying to gain knowledge here right now.
Are you testing the United States or looking at other sources around the world?
I'm concentrating on the U.S.
Have you seen any patterns, though, in 8 months? That's kind of a lengthy time.
Yeah, I mean, patterns are, I've seen patterns where it's, higher in the winter, lower in the summer, typically. And that could be because they vent more in the winter. That could be maybe because they don't want to vent in the spring, where it could affect the plants, the growing of our plants. Maybe more mutations would happen if they vented a lot in the spring. So they vent in the fall, basically. And so that gives, the plant growth has stopped. I'm pretty sure that's the reason why they do that. I can see really no other reason why they might not vent in the springtime. A lot of the refueling operations happen in the fall. And, the mutation rate, around here, I can go out on any given day and find double-headed flowers.
Wow.
It doesn't take me long.
Yeah, but there is a nuclear power. There's a nuclear power plant there.
Well, yeah, we have the little reactor at OSU. Oregon State's got their trigger reactor there. And I got to tell you, around that reactor, there's a lot of plant mutations, more than I've seen anywhere else in Corvallis. So I'll leave it at that. In the one block around that whole place, it's quite interesting in the spring.
That's it. I went to this BBC station to see what they were talking about. Alpha, beta, and gamma radiations is like a quick version. It's a bite-sized view of gamma radiation. This is what it says: alpha, beta, and gamma. If the radioactive source is inside the body, perhaps after being swallowed or breathed in, alpha radiation is the most dangerous because it is easily absorbed by the cells. Beta and gamma radiation are not as dangerous because they are less likely to be absorbed by a cell and will usually pass right through it. If the radioactive source is outside the body, alpha radiation is not as dangerous because it is unlikely to reach a living cell. Gamma and beta radiations are the most dangerous sources because they can penetrate the skin and damage the cells inside.
Yeah. So I look at it in a slightly different way. I look at them like a gun.
Yeah.
Like, alpha is a shotgun. Beta is more like a let's call it a 22, and then gamma is more like a 3-06. So the alpha, being a shotgun, it doesn't penetrate very good. But when it's inside you and you let that shotgun off, it does a lot of damage. The beta is like a 22. So whether it's inside or outside, it's going to put a little tiny thing at you, and it'll, it's not. It certainly has the ability to mutate and to split genes and do chromosome damage, but it takes a lot of it. And gamma is the most penetrating. That's like the 30-06.
Oh my gosh!
That can go from the outside, and that can zip right through you. Boom, 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 boom. No problem. So that one is dangerous from the outside. Alpha is wicked dangerous from the inside.
So
beta
gamma is what they're measuring. Gamma is the dangerous one to see what the levels are.
Gamma is what I'm measuring. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, Matt, we have about 30 seconds left. I want to thank you for joining our radio show. I want to thank the listeners of KEPW for listening to our show. And thank everybody for actively engaging and even taking the time to find out about this information. We really appreciate you being here and supporting our radio stations. And I always say put your courage feet on, because it's not easy to face this, but it's time for us to be adults and take action. Thanks, Matt. I hope you'll join us again.
Yes, thank you, Lonnie. And give me a call.
Okay, we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Okay.